We wanted to make a film that you could watch without the fight. The fight is sort of the icing that I wanted to earn a fight. I'm not a massive, sports movie, boxing film. I love them. I love boxing sometimes, but it wasn't like I set out to make a boxing film. I wanted to make a film about a character, about a boxer, about a person, about an underdog, and about those struggles that were relatable as a human more than anything.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, a once-renowned boxer takes a redemptive journey through his past and present in director Jack Huston's drama, Day of the Fight. The film shows a day in the life of Mikey, Irish Mike Flanigan, a champion boxer getting ready for his first fight since leaving prison. As he prepares for the most important fight of his life, he reconnects with the people he was closest to and tries to make things right. Day of the Fight is Huston's directorial debut. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Huston spoke with director Gus Van Sant about filming Day of the Fight. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
I mean, we were just talking about the short film Day of the Fight by Stanley Kubrick and how that influenced this or sparked this particular film.
Yeah, it's I had an idea of Michael as a boxer from very early on when I was doing Boardwalk with him, and I used to remember him punching sandbags and going off to the boxing gym. So I think the seed was planted there. But when I was sort of coming up with a story, and when I was during the pandemic, I remember going on a bit of a deep dive of Kubrick, and Day of the Fight is a 15-minute documentary short of Walter Cartier on the day of a prize fight. Not much happens, if you remember. He's with his twin brother. He has his dog in the car. He goes and plays fetch, and it's just a very sort of normal day, which ultimately ends with him going to Madison Square Gardens and winning his fight. But I sort of took from that a little bit of the simplicity of an idea or a film. It can work structurally with be it the day of a prize fight, but you just add an element, something that's going to raise the stakes. And a lot of the films I love did that. And I thought, well, what if it wasn't just any old day of a prize fight? What if this was possibly his last day? And he's the only one who knows he has this ailment. And what would you do on your last day? Who would you see? Who would you speak to? What would you say? Especially when one's lived a life like Mikey has, which is filled with regret, and he's on this sort of redemptive journey. I sort of wanted it to be sort of a little bit of an elegy, the tragedy, the fairy tale aspect of it. And it was funny. We talked, me and Michael, quite a bit about this role and about sort of crafting the space around it and who were those people. And then it got to me writing it, and I sort of wrote it over 10 days, trying just to get it as a constant stream of thought, just get it on the paper. Like, that's the best thing you can do. And it led me to a lot of different characters along the way, but they sort of came to me as I was writing. And we wanted to make a film that you could watch without the fight. The fight is sort of the icing that I wanted to earn a fight. I'm not a massive, sports movie, boxing film. I love them. I love boxing sometimes, but it wasn't like I set out to make a boxing film. I wanted to make a film about a character, about a boxer, about a person, about an underdog, and about those struggles that were relatable as a human more than anything.
And were you working with Mike in mind? I mean, you had known him as a boxer and actor during Boardwalk Empire, or?
Yeah, so we met in Boardwalk, and I know that Gus did a beautiful film with Michael called Last Days, which is phenomenal, and it's just I had the grace of God that one of the first things that I really did was Boardwalk, something that I was really proud of, but that was due very much to mine and Michael's relationship. I think you're only as good as who you're opposite or who you're working with. And Michael had this amazing ability to just raise the bar. And I would look into his eyes, and he could be tough as hell and all the rest of it, but there's this sort of sensitivity and this vulnerability in his eyes and who he is as a person. I think he's just got one of the great hearts. And when I thought of the story, I couldn't imagine anybody but Michael. It's so funny when you really are writing for somebody. That was key in this situation, because I couldn't imagine anybody but Michael playing Irish Mike. It was, every word was his voice in my head. And I think that's quite beautiful sometimes, because a lot of the films I fell in love with when I was younger and growing up, films that made me fall in love with cinema and wanting to be in the business, I guess, those films, they were always anchored by a performance. And, I could think of any great movie, but, when I think of the great movie, I also think about the great performance that goes hand in hand with that great movie. And a lot can be said for the whole casting process. That, my grandfather always used to say 90% is casting, because, you want to give the person who's right for the role the job, and then it's theirs. Own it. I remember an actress once saying, well, he didn't say much to me. And they were like, well, if you did something wrong, he would have. But the great part was, it was the casting. It was, he'd given you the role. It was, I don't have to worry about you. I have to worry about all the other things. I have to sort of stay on track and look at the overall. But it was beautiful with Michael, because from day one, and it wasn't, Michael will be the first to say, it was probably the hardest to get Michael cast in this film. I had to walk away from a lot of people, a lot of different offers, a lot of deals. They tried to stop us from making this in black and white. They tried to stop us from making it period. They tried to stop me from casting Michael. And there were certain things that I wouldn't bend on and I wouldn't sacrifice, because it would be sacrificing the entire film, not a piece of it, the entire film. Each one of those things were the film. So, I was very lucky that that friendship was brought about.
And the story, I was mostly taken when I first saw this this film. I was mostly taken by the themes that were kind of running through it, and mostly the connections to family that you brought about. Were you writing about your own relationships to family when you were writing?
Yeah. I've had a very difficult relationship with my father. Very tough, and we haven't spoken for a very long time. But it's funny, subconsciously, I think everything, me and Michael, I always remember we actually sort of related quite well on that, and the sort of difficulties we had growing up, and it's not always as peachy as it is on the outside. That the truth is sometimes a lot deeper and a lot darker. So there were certain things when I do think about relationships and what I would have done differently, and that idea of regret. I do think there is regret in life, but I love this sentiment of, well, how are you moving forward? Like this idea of moving forward in an honest and good way. I think you can do bad things, but you can be a very good person. I don't think they are mutually exclusive. I think that is the truth of that. And I think nobody sort of personifies that than Michael. Like in this movie, it's somebody who's done, which I think probably the worst possible act, ostensibly murdering a child. I said, how can you choose something that you could never forgive yourself for? my grandfather got in a car crash when he was very young. It caused a fatality, and he never drove again, and it haunted him his entire life. And I think there was very much a life. We spend a life sometimes placing blame on a lot of things, and that's not right. I think we all have difficulties, and it's how you overcome those things. And I really wanted to make a film that's positive in its idea. I wanted to make something that actually is about feelings, about these human relationships, that it's not too late, that the people that matter in your life are far more willing to forgive than you might expect. And, I don't think we have too many films these days that are actual, what I call like films about feelings. It's quite a lot of cynicism in the world that we don't really, I go to the theater to escape. I'm like, I love going to the theater to remember. Like, I want to remember all of those difficult moments. I want to leave with something in the pit of my stomach. I want to wake up remembering stuff. So, that's sort of where we were going with this. It's like, I was trying to write something honest. I was trying to write something that, if I could put it on, how a friend can be your savior, your mentor can step in, even your father, who has been this awful, abusive, overbearing figure in your life. All he ever wanted was his dad to say, "I love you." But he did love him. And you see it in that flicker with Joe, and that's the masterclass of watching Joe act, is he doesn't say anything. And there's just that one moment after he plays the music that you just see his face go, and it's like all the memories are washing over him and coming back to him. And you see the pain that he was going through it too. And, sometimes we're not able to ask for help. And maybe his dad was in it too. It's playing with that.
Have you written other things before this?
I have, not very well. I think I dabbled with writing. I think it's I would never be so bold as to say I think something is good or something's worth making. I think I would write for myself more than anything else. And I love the writing aspect of, this, because I think, before you give it to anybody else, there's no wrong answer. Sort of, you can put anything down and anything can take you to the next step or the next place. And you can be consistently surprised, by things. It's just, sometimes I've written other stuff, but this was the first time when I was writing, it felt right, if that makes sense to anybody. It's like when I was writing a scene, it just happened. It fell out of me in a way that I was, I felt there was an honesty to the writing. I wasn't trying to be contrived about it. I was actually trying to really think about what would happen in this situation. And I think being an actor, sometimes you're very conscious about interactions and about how you relate to other people in those conversations, and you actually try to make them very real, and you can sometimes call bullshit. So I think that was the major thing, is like trying to, and obviously handing the role to Michael and the other incredible actors we had in this. It's beautiful because you can see how writing's here, but as soon as someone owns that part, that's where the magic happens, because you're witnessing it just be elevated in such a way. And I'm not the person to say no. I don't like the word no. I like the word, yeah, let's try it. Let's do it. Let's go. We both know if it's not going to work or it's not working. It's a bit like music. You feel like the chord, it's a wrong chord. So the cool thing was, we were always sort of like very open to that. So.
When you had the script and you were putting together the funding, was there, what was the process in deciding what the film would look like, and finding the, say, cinematographer, and what was that process like?
Well, I actually wrote a bit of a, it sounds, I wrote a director's statement on the script, which said how I'd like to film the picture. I said how the camera would work. I talked about the black and white. I talked about him living in purgatory. His life is black and white, and like these flits of color that come to him at certain moments, like he's painting color to his memories, and memories lie to us. Sometimes memories aren't real. I didn't want them to have I didn't call them flashbacks because they're not. They come at the strangest moments, and they don't have a beginning. They don't have an end, but something about them sticks in your mind. And for some strange reason, that's what they are. They're exactly that. There's this memory, but the memory, like I was talking the other day, it was so funny about my father leaving when I was a kid. And I said, I remember I was looking through the banisters. I was looking down. I remember like feeling the cloth in my hand and like my mother at the door and this thing. And then my brother said, but you weren't there. And I was like, what do you mean I wasn't there? But maybe I wasn't, but maybe I was, or maybe it was a different day. And it's so funny because it's such a memory that's imprinted. So I wanted to find a DP that understood, like just had the sense and the look, and Peter Simonite, who I think is remarkable in what he did. And we had a beautiful operator on Steadicam called Jim McConkey. He and his brother Larry McConkey, were sort of legends in the business. Nick Nars and Anthony Corello, who was our AC, is just one of the absolute greatest. The focus puller, probably the most undersung job in a movie. But you only hear, they only get told off when something's wrong. They never get told like, "Wow, that was amazing how you did that." And we didn't have much time. We had 20 days on this movie, so we I was very lucky that these guys showed up at a fraction of their pay because they really wanted to come and make a film like this. We don't realize actually making something in black and white. Everyone be like, well, can you make it color? I was like, no, because the image, what is in my head, only works in black and white. Maybe it's a bit of that throwback homage to films past, films that move me, but it was a bit of a deal breaker. And we went through a lot of different people who would sort of come to the table, play around with it. It was impossible to get this film, and there were multiple false starts. And I think in our final contract, they didn't tell me. I just didn't mention I was going to shoot it in black and white. So they didn't write it couldn't be in black and white. So when they saw the dailies, the investors were very surprised. They were like, well, it's in black and white. And I was like, well, of course it is. I thought we talked about this. We managed to get away with that one, surprisingly.
Yeah. I mean, the cinematographic style and also the way that it's written, I think, and the seriousness of the themes and the actions are sort of hearkening back to another period. I mean, I am halfway through. I think I was just sort of blown away by this connection to that period, maybe mid-50s, Brando on the waterfront, where you sort of channeled some of your grandfather's works, John Huston's works, and it was a magic trick. It was great.
Thank you for that. Yeah, no, my father, when, one of the better memories was when I was 9 years old. He said, I'm going to play you 3 of your grandfather's favorite movies. And one of those movies was On the Waterfront. I was 9. And that's very much a moment of where I watched a film and I realized something could inspire you so much that it made you at that moment say, I will do anything to do that, to be a part of that, whatever that was, whatever you created, that was everything to me. And that feeling sort of resonated in such a way that it's sort of, in essence, been there alongside me my whole career. Because I think, one of the greatest filmmakers who ever lived, opposite me here, it's like you make films because, every now and again, they don't work out the way you want them to. Sometimes they do. And it's magic when it does happen, but you're always sort of searching for that picture. You're always searching for it. And I remember, I love to read, and hearing a lot of filmmakers talk about that sort of constant pursuit. But the nice thing is the love, that there is an absolute love for the art form, and actually sort of, when it does work and it does come together, there really is magic in this. It was when you mentioned the throwback, those films of the 50s, they were specifically dear to me and to my heart. And I always say that they really were able to focus on a character, on somebody, on a life. I say, this isn't a boxing film. This is a film about a boxer. That's what it is. And, that is, anchored by this beautiful performance of Michael and all these unbelievable actors who come in and for a day, but like, you're having a similar conversation, but it's amazing how each one is so unique because the relationship's completely unique. You want to make something relatable because that's exactly what it is. Every single relationship in our life is unique and is, it's got its own way in. But if you were saying goodbye or sorry, how do you do that without making it about you? He's not asking for forgiveness. He's doing something. It's almost like St. Michael, it's like he's going about he's putting his house in order in the best possible way.
Yeah, definitely. What kind of things are you thinking about to work on next? If there is anything. If
there is a next. I mean, right, we're right in the middle of getting this film. The film's coming out December 6th, and you'd think, everything's, peachy, because that's happening. Like, we just lost our money again, and it's still happening. And, we're finding in different places, but like, this has been a battle every step of the way. I'm working on a few things. I think a lot of that's going to be, see how this journey goes, because I don't think we're at the end of it or even close to it right now. But that's why I thank everyone here for coming out, because it really means so much to us, because this film needs your help. It's, we're in a bit of a crossroads of independent cinema right now, especially films, adult films about, human stories. There's not much of them. We just had kids come up to us the other day and who came and saw the movie, and they were like, oh my God, I've never felt this in a film. And then you realize they hadn't had the true pleasure of the films that we grew up with. And that's so sad to me, because I'm like, they had the films that made me want to do this. And their films, their idea of movies are these sort of huge spectacles that do make you forget. And so I was like, well, that's it. Hopefully there's a few more films like this, if people like it, that, will spark a new generation of people wanting to go and make human stories. So that would be my wish.
So nothing particular.
Nothing particular. No. I'm working on a thriller called Alma, which this is the thing, and another possible bigger movie, but we don't know yet.
A thriller that could sell better, maybe. Let's see what my
I should try. I know I should sell it better. I was like, I don't know.
Honestly, we're in the middle of a algorithmic crisis, so it's only thrillers and it's only heists, really, for us to do as directors. Yeah, it is true. That's sort of, they push you in the genre base. That's it. So unless your budgets are small. And Mike Pitt's history of boxing, did you go with him to any events of any?
Well, no. Well, Michael's he was training for this film for a year, but he'd been training his whole life. I mean, the last 10 years, he's been in and out boxing gyms. I mean, just yesterday he was sparring with Freddie Roach, which is the coolest thing in the world. Like, he's a wonderful boxer. We had a day and a half to shoot that boxing scene. Many would in here would know, like that's no time to get an entire boxing scene. They kept on taking days away from us. So we had to think outside the box and just how would we get things. A lot of that comes down to the brilliance of Michael because, they actually did make kind of contact. They were sort of boxing at the end of it because they realized we didn't have time to explain. The edit was in here. We just had to go to this corner, the beats, the stages of the fight. We're not going to go back. We're not going to choreograph this. We're going to put it together like almost on the fly. 3 cameras. Thank God we had a third for that day and a half. But it was amazing because I think his training for that long, really comes to play because he didn't want to go and train like the choreography. He said, if I'm playing a boxer, I want to go and train as a boxer. So I think Mike was in just this unbelievable shape and he would just go. And it was brilliant because you could honestly just point a camera and just move around and find those shots because we had an actor and a beautiful opponent, Cameron, who is a real boxer, but they were so in trust of each other that, Mike was yelling, you got to hit me back, which is like remarkable because most of the time actors are like, don't touch me. So it's a treat to have an actor so willing. What a participant. It was, I owe him everything for that.
And how did you create the score for it?
Well, music is definitely another character in the movie, just like New York and Brooklyn is. Music I wrote the needle drops that were pretty much written while I was listening to those songs as I was writing, and I was listening to a lot of different musicians and scores. But I actually enlisted my brother-in-law, Ben McDermott, who is a beautiful musician who lives in the woods. He's never scored a film, but I sent him an early cut of the movie and I said, listen, just watch this. If it moves you, would you be interested? And he was like, I've never done this before. And I was like, well, only do it, if it moves you. And he watched it and said, I'd really actually love to give this a go. So I fully went down that road with him. We were in the studio a lot, like he did it with this beautiful quartet at the end, but some of those pieces of music, that final piece of score when he's sort of like walking to his deathbed, is I think one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've heard. I just think it was remarkable. And I think film is very much about music. It's like they go hand in hand. It's like when a scene's working, it is like a piece of music. It's like it flows in a certain way. You can always hear the wrong notes, but the actors know that too. So that's why sometimes it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. You got to let them discover that, let them have their performance. Only if it feels like it was really going off would it get pulled back in. But I find the whole, it felt very much like a bit of an orchestra, the whole coming together of a set, of a crew and everything.
Great. So great. Thank you very much for showing the film. It's fantastic. I hope everyone can rally around Jack's movie. And
having Gus Van Sant, this is talk about showing up. Gus has long been one of my all-time, favorite filmmakers and has inspired more to me than anybody. Michael obviously got to work, but this is talk about showing up. This meant everything to me today to have you do this with me. I'm in awe of you, sir. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.